All right. Looks like I am live. Let me get it loaded over here so I can see the comments. Hope you guys are doing good today on this sunny Tuesday. I'm ready to wrap up for the day and get outside a little bit. It looks beautiful out there. Okay. Get the comments loaded. If you're joining me live, go ahead and say hi in the comments so that I know you're here. I'm really excited for today's live because this is a topic that when I announced it, I felt like everyone got really excited about. So I hope that even if you are coming back to watch the replay, that this is something that grabbed your attention. It's something that you are really excited to hear about. And when I was writing up the content, I was asking several people who was reading it over for me, proofreading a little bit and giving me some feedback. I was asking, is this too simple? Is this too simple? And the resounding answer was no, this is exactly what people who are non-designers need to hear. And I think sometimes we forget as designers on this end of Adobe that yeah, we've been doing this for so long that we forget some of those principles that we learned, quite a while ago that we could pass on to other people. So if, yeah, I hope that this resonates with you. If you're joining me live, go ahead and give me a comment so I can say hi. I am just rocking and rolling this week. Honestly, I am really excited about all the projects that I have going on. I have several happening right now that are just getting my creative juices super flowing, which is always a great thing for any creative, but also just to really like get in the zone. Hey, Tony, so glad you're here. I hope there's going to be some awesome tips for you today. Yeah, so I'm working on all these projects and they're just kind of coming out of the woodworks and I'm here for it. I'm ready. I was working until about 10 last night, which I do not do on a regular basis. I will say I typically limit that extra work, but yeah, I'm really excited about all the things that are going on right now. So one kind of funny thing that's happening in my household right now that is really silly as we kill some time and let people join us. My dogs are fighting right now. They're in a tiff. They're fighting like sisters. They're adopted from different times, different litters, different places, the whole 9 yards. But they seem to have this like super bonded sister relationship where they really love each other, but also when they're upset with each other, like it, you 100% know it. And it is the funniest thing to watch. So we gave them bones the other day, like new treats for being so good. And Izzy, our older dog or our bigger dog, she's actually the younger one, but she's the brown one. If you've seen my pictures, she just eats things as fast as she possibly can. Just bless her heart. She's just hungry all the time. So she downs this bone like as fast as she can. Within a matter of a couple hours, it's gone, right? And then Kaya, our husky, full bred husky, she likes to savor it. So she hangs on to it. She'll nibble on it a little bit at a time, but she's actually watching Izzy the whole time because it's this big game to her. So it's like this keep away game. So Izzy will get done with her bone. She's looking over at Kaya like, hey, where'd you get that? Like, why do you still have that? Did you get another one? And then it becomes this big game of keep away that they like play all around our house for days. So we're in about day 3 of the same game of keep away. And Kaya has like this much of her little bone left that she still has yet to finish, that she is just tormenting Izzy with. It is sad, but also like hilarious to watch. I think the worst thing is when you come in and you've been like out of the house, we've been gone for the day or something, you come in and they're like not looking at each other. You can tell that they're fighting. It's the funniest thing. You just don't know who started it. So then you just don't know whose side to be on. It is just hilarious. They're a mess. Huskies have such a crazy personality, and I am here for it. Like our husky Kaya, she rolls her eyes all the time. And every time she does, it's like when your kid curses and you know you're not supposed to laugh, but it's like really funny and you can't help yourself but to laugh. that's how it is when Kaya rolls her eyes. Like, I know I'm not supposed to give in to that crazy personality and that drama queen side of her, but man, it is just so cute. It's so funny. I just can't help it. I just can't help it. So anyways, I would love to know if you're joining me live, what you have going on today. So tell me in the comments, what are you up to right now? I have some friends right now that are on vacation. I have other people like, you know, hitting work really hard right now. I feel like this is kind of a crazy season for a lot of people as we go into like thinking about Christmas. And anytime I see one of those posts that's like X amount of days or weekends until Christmas, I'm like, oh no, crap, I have a lot to do before then. So I actually spent this weekend working on some homemade Christmas gifts that I'm going to give out, and hoping that by spending a few weekends now getting ahead, I won't be quite as stressed out as I was last year. So I am definitely no saint when it comes to working ahead on the Christmas season, but hopefully I've alleviated just a little bit of stress, because last year I was like, the weekend before going to the mall to pick up last minute gifts, which stressed me out. So hopefully we're not going to do that this year. On Sunday, we are going to take Christmas pictures with my parents and my sister and her kids. And about every 2 years or so, I gift them a photo session so that we can have updated pictures together. So I'm very excited about that, but I'm also very excited for the tacos and margaritas that we're going to do afterwards. Oh, Tony's working on network configurations for a client and web projects as well. Whew, I don't know how your brain does it. I had to troubleshoot something technical the other day and was like, I might explode today. Today's the day. I don't know how you do it all day, every day, but you're definitely the expert at it. So I'm here for you, staying in doing all of that stuff. Yeah. Web projects are a lot of fun though, I think. I have several of those going on myself. So, okay, we're about 7 minutes in. We'll continue to let people join me live. I'm going to share my screen via Zoom, and it is a little bit funny how I have to do this so that, hey, Ashley, I'm going to share my screen. You're going to see my notes for like a second, and then they're going to go away. So bear with me for just a minute. We'll get it all worked out. In case you didn't know, you can actually share a presentation while you're on Zoom and only see your notes, but it is a little bit backwards how you have to do it. All right. Now we should be good. Okay, so it looks like from what I can see on my phone here, you guys can see my screen and not my notes, which is awesome. So I am here for this topic. I'm really pumped about it. I was really excited about the response and how excited you guys were about it. And I think that as I was talking about before everybody kind of joined me live, this is something that us as designers, we kind of forget to think about, right? Like I've been doing this for so long that a lot of these things come second nature to me. So it was really fun to sit down and write up my top 10 design tips that anyone could take on. And I hope that these tips really elevate your DIY design to the next level, because I'm just going to say, like, I know that tackling your own design can be really challenging, but there are just times where you can't hire somebody like me, right? You can't because of your bottom line, like the budget restrictions or even the time restrictions. Sometimes you're like making the graphic at 11 p.m. that's going to be posted the next morning at 8 a.m., right? Like I know what it means to run a business, trust me. And I've watched my entire family run businesses, and I know that sometimes you just got to get in and do the thing, right? And that also includes, in this modern like technology driven world, sometimes that includes DIYing your design. So as much as some of us hate doing it, I think that there are some tips in here that could really help you out, because let's not forget that our clients, our customers shouldn't ever suffer because that's not a skill that we have, right? Especially when it comes to the clarity of the message that you're putting out, the arrangement of the items so that it is really easy to understand what you're trying to say in the design that you're putting out. I think it's really important to remember that they shouldn't have to decipher through all of it and read a messy design and try to figure out a messy flyer or a messy brochure because you didn't have the skill set to put it together. So I think that these are going to give you some great tips that will, in the end, allow you to make some aesthetically pleasing DIY designs that could end up being social media posts, emails, maybe even websites if you've chosen to DIY your website. So I'm here for it. I'm really excited. And I want you guys to know that I am never that designer that is looking over my shoulder going, why didn't they hire me to do that? I don't feel that way at all, because I know that you're going to come to me when the situation is right, or you're going to go to your designer when the situation is right. But not every time does the situation call for hiring a professional, right? Okay, so let's dive right into tip number 1. So tip number 1, and I would probably argue this is one of the most important, is to develop a visual hierarchy. So what the heck does this mean, right? In basic terms, this means that you need to decide what elements are the most to the least important in your design, right? Not everything can carry the same amount of importance. That's really important to keep in mind. I absolutely love this quote. Visual hierarchy refers to the arrangement or presentation of elements in a way that implies importance. So you can even see here, I quoted my little source Wikipedia, which I usually never quote them, but I thought that this quote was so great. You can see I'm obviously saying in my layout here that the source is way less important than the quote itself, right? So I'm developing this visual hierarchy. I'm telling you what's important to what's least important. So here's a little example for you. When you look at this image, chances are you aren't going to see 2 circles. You're going to see a black circle and a pink circle. You're going to see a big circle and a small circle. You're going to see a close circle and one that's further away, or whatever the case is. And the reason for this is pretty simple. When we're presented with something as simple as what we see here, 2 circles, a person won't just see the 2 ordinary circles, but our minds are amazing, you guys. Our minds try to find ways to differentiate between them and try to find ways to group them together. I was actually just reading a book today that was talking about this, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually talking about this today. It was crazy. So our minds look at graphics. This is a very simple version, but our minds look at graphics and they say, how do we categorize this? How do we put this together? Or which one's the most important? Which one's closest to us? Which one's whatever, right? So it's really important to think that maybe one circle is bigger or smaller, one's colored. There could be a variety of differences here. And these differences will allow us to distinguish between the objects, but also to give them unique meanings, right? We don't have enough context to go off of here with this particular graphic because it's so simple, but your mind is immediately thinking, why is that one bigger? Why is that one pink? Right? Our minds want to solve the problem. It wants to solve the puzzle. So as people who put together designs, that's our job, right? So as you can see here in this presentation slide here, the differences in scale suggest that maybe something's closer to us or further away. Maybe something's more dominant, right? Maybe something's more important. Those variations in color might suggest that one object holds like a unique personality. Why is that little teal one up there, right? It's set apart from the other objects because of how it's different. So if our viewers' minds are already wanting to differentiate these items, they'll find a way to, right? Our brains are insane, right? They're really cool, and they will find a way to differentiate them. So if you haven't told your viewers what's important in your design, if you haven't been the leader in that conversation, if you haven't said, this sale 30% off is the most important thing for you to take away, and all the details of it is the second most important thing for you to take away, then they might get it backwards, right? They might read the sentence that says sale ends tomorrow, and they're saying, crap, the sale ends tomorrow, so I don't have time to order. They might read the sentence that says not valid on such and such items, right? There's a reason why all of those commercials and all of those mail outs and things say not valid in blah, blah, blah states or whatever. And it's like teeny tiny at the bottom because they don't want you to see that first. So as business owners, it's really important for us to make those decisions ahead of time before we get it all jumbled up on a flyer or on a social media graphic. So how do we do this, right? How do we actually develop a visual hierarchy? We use size and color, contrast, alignment, repetition, proximity, density and white space, and style and texture. So we're actually saying here, we're using these key elements to say this one is the most important thing for you to pay attention to first. But this thing over here is actually the least important. And there's a whole scale in between to say when those different elements fall in. Okay, so developing a visual hierarchy is very important. Tip number 2. And if you guys want to throw questions in the comments, I got my phone over here, so I'm keeping an eye on those. If you have a specific question, I'll answer them for you. So tip number 2 here is to use white space to your advantage. If you've ever talked to a graphic designer, they're like, white space is my best friend. And I say this often, actually. So it is very commonly known that most people in the design world, even in interior design, we love our space. But there is a reason for that, okay? I love this quote so much. White space or negative space is the part that's left blank. It's the empty space. So if you're wondering, what is this term you're talking about? There you go. That's a great definition. It's the part that's left blank. So don't be afraid to let your elements breathe a little bit. Give them their own space to live in, right? This is really important that each element has its own space around it. So in this ad that you can see up on my screen here, we're looking at an Apple Watch ad from several years ago. But this is actually a really cool example of white space because one, white space can actually elevate your design, right? If you look at a lot of the expensive companies that are out there, if you're going to go buy a Range Rover, it's going to, a lot of their ads, a lot of the things that they use for display, even their showroom, right? It's really clean. It's very spacious. A lot of luxury companies, even in fashion, use white space to their advantage. It's what makes them feel more luxurious. So often what we miss as amateur designers is that by putting a little more space in our design, we're not making it more boring. We're actually making it more impactful and elevating the value behind it, right? Okay, so in this ad in particular, what do you think is the part that they want you to look at? Yeah, they want you to look at the whole watch, the whole circle of the watch that's on the left-hand side. That's the part they want you to see. But how they've done it is they've used white space to get your eye there, right? Our eyes, fun fact, move at a Z pattern when we look at things. So we're starting in the top left corner of anything we look at, and we're moving in a Z pattern. So what's happening specifically here is that we're starting in the top left corner, our mind is subconsciously, and we actually see this cool bend in the Apple Watch band, and we see this space, almost where the light hits that band in that one little bend there. we see that, but the space that's behind it leads our eye back to the full Apple Watch. So they're using what they know about brain psychology, right? And the way our eyes move to use that Z pattern and the space to lead our eyes to where they want it to go. They want us to see that whole watch. Okay, I get asked this question all the time. Does it have to be white? No, it doesn't have to be white. It can be any color. White space is just the term that's used. So it can be any color you want, as long as it's free of any elements like text or image. So you can even see here, I played with that Z pattern and led your eye down to that piece of text using white space. Okay, so tip number 3, don't get too cute with your fonts. This is a fun one for me. Fun fact, Stephen actually wrote a note to me whenever we were first dating, and it was in Comic Sans. He literally pulled up Microsoft Word, found Comic Sans, which if you don't know is the most hated font by any graphic designer. And he said, if I was to propose to you in Comic Sans, would you say yes or no? I thought it was so funny because I literally got out a pen and wrote, I would say no, please don't do that. So don't get too cute with your fonts. There is a reason all of these different fonts exist. And you know what? There's a reason some of them are more expensive than others. So I love this little slide here. It says, don't use too many fonts and styles. It hurts. Keep it simple. So a good rule of thumb here is to keep it really simple. Readability is way more important than a good design, in a good design, than using fonts as your way of making it cute. I would rather see you use any other design element. Cute images, really fun graphics, bright colors. I would rather you see any other element than cutesy, fun fonts to enhance your design. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. Here are a couple tips I have for you to maximize your readability in a design. Remember that hierarchy we were talking about where you're saying this is the most important thing in my design and this is the least important thing in my design? The same thing applies with your text. So it's important to break your text into headings and subheadings, body copy, and accent text. And by this, you're saying my headings are the most important thing for you to look at, viewer, right? So you want to bring importance to them. And you want to say, oh, maybe my subheadings are the next important thing. So they're not going to be quite as big. Maybe they're not going to be quite as bold, but they're going to be less important on the page than something else. Another tip here is to use contrasting colors to make something stand out. So you can see here, I put this is a heading in pink. It makes it stand out even more, right? The next one is to use that white space to your advantage so the eye is drawn to the text that's most important. Okay, so I'm actually playing with the white space on this slide here to create this kind of awkward space around the heading. Whereas I could have just aligned it, but I'm really popping that out there to the left to say, look at this space around here is bringing your eye to this heading even more. Okay, so use white space to your advantage, even in text. Okay, when everything's always centered, sometimes it can be hard to create a visual interest. So my next tip is to not center align everything. Just don't do it. This actually makes text so much harder to read. Also, don't have everything aligned in different directions. If you have something aligned to the left and one thing centered and one thing to the right in your design, it's just too much to look at, right? And if our brains have to take too long to decipher anything, they'll just say no, right? We're just walking away at that point, even if we don't realize it, even if we're continuing to try to read the literature or try to understand the presentation or try to decipher what people are saying on social media, our minds are just turned off at that point where we're not really absorbing all of it. Another good tip is to not use more than 2 to 3 fonts in a design. It's just too hard to look at, right? We're just giving the viewer too many stopping points where they're having to look again to figure out what's going on. Sometimes subtle differences can seem more like a mistake to a viewer than a conscious change. So choose fonts that are actually different from each other to get your point across, not slight variations of each other. So in this example here, it's actually just a very slight variation of the font. It's not the same font, but they're very close. And so the viewer is seeing font pairing example 1. That's how your eye is reading it, right? It's just all mushed together. And there's no clear designation, even though one of them is a little bit bigger. So it's still making it harder for the viewer to say, this statement stands alone, and then this statement stands alone, right? So a better example of this would be font pairing, example 2, right? They each have their own space that they're carrying because they're different from each other. So in this example, you can see they're different enough that your eye actually wants to read them both. Now, you don't want to use more than 2 or 3 fonts in your whole design, which may mean that you're using things like font weights to get this differentiating point across, right? So things like bold or thin, if you download really good fonts, or even if you're in Canva, some of the ones that have a lot of options to them, they'll have like a thin and a book or a normal, and then they'll have a semi-bold and a bold or an extra bold. So there's all kinds of options for you to work with within the same font family. So as a general rule of thumb, when a font gets bigger, the space between the letters should get smaller. And then when a font gets smaller, it's okay to increase the space between the letters so it's easier to use. So in this slide here, I've actually done that. So on the utilize white space, I've added more space between those letters so that it takes up the amount of space on the page that I want it to. And on the big font here between letters, I've actually decreased the space between the letters. So these are all techniques that are tried and true, right? They were taught to me in school. Those are things that they're made, techniques that are made to increase readability. Now, let me ask you this. Do you want your people to be confused by the designs that you're putting out? No, of course not, which is why readability, maximum readability on any of your designs is crazy important. So when it comes to alignment, and I love this one, try finding another element to align this new element with. So when we added and between lines onto this slide, it's like, where do you put it? I could have put it anywhere on this slide, right? So sometimes when it's hard to figure out where to position things, find another element to align it with. So it could be the corner of a photo, the top of a square box, the center of a circle, or even the top or bottom of your logo. This helps to not have too many different directions that your eye's headed in, right? In this slide, my eye is really staying in the same general direction. So I aligned and between lines with the L in letters. So find something that already exists in your design to attach this new element to. Okay, so here's a couple of questions that you should ask yourself when you're critiquing your own work or you're starting to work on one of your designs. What part of this message should pop, right? What's the important part? In what order do I want this to be read? This is crazy important. You could look at a flyer and probably read it in a different order lots of different times, right? But if you have a clear hierarchy within your design, everyone is going to read it in that order, right? Most likely. And then the third one, how can I make this easier for the reader? And this comes in a little bit with review and critique, but when you're looking at your own designs, these are great questions to ask. And that last one can really make some big differences, because if you're saying, how can I make this easier for the reader? That could mean combining sentences. That could mean removing text altogether that doesn't need to be there. And that could make a huge difference in the readability of your design. Okay, tip number 4. I love this one. Understand that color has a purpose, right? We all love to add color to our designs. It's a really fun element to work with. And it can be really fun to think about, oh, I like blue or I like green, so I'm going to use that color. But color actually has a meaning. And it has cultural differences that it carries with it too. Color might mean one thing in the United States, but mean the complete opposite in China, like red actually does. That's an actual example. And it's really important as we choose colors that we think about the meaning that they carry, because at the end of the day, we're putting out designs to try to connect with the right buyers, with the right donors, with the right people that we want to do business with, right? And that also comes from them attaching themselves to a feeling, right? They feel safe. They feel like they're wrapped in a hug when they look at your things. And there's no perfect answer to this. It's just a matter of being aware that what you put out actually does have a meaning attached. So I love this quote too. Color theory is both the science and art of color. It explains how humans perceive color. So it's not just about the art part, right? It's not just about the part that says, do I like it? Do I not? Not just the subjective part, but there is a science behind it. So in order to really demonstrate this, I wanted to put together some examples for you guys. So red. Red is for energy, passion, and danger. So you can see here, if those words don't accurately describe your brand or your company, then maybe that's not a color that you need to be using in your marketing, right? If you don't want them to think danger or strong energy or strong passion, then maybe that's just not the right fit. Orange is for creativity, youth, and enthusiasm. That's a fun one. Yellow is for happiness, hope, and spontaneity. Green is for nature, growth, and harmony, but also wealth and stability. So actually, you may have caught on, but I use green in my group because we're talking about business owners and we're talking about finding success in your business, right? Wealth and stability. Blue is for calm, trust, and intelligence. Purple is for luxury, mystery, and spirituality. Black is for power, elegance, and sophistication. White is for purity, innocence, and minimalism. And gray is for professionalism, formality, and conventionality. So that just gives you a quick overview of a few different color meanings. This can go on and on and on, right? So if you're wanting to use a specific color in your design and you're questioning, is that the right color that I should be using? One quick way to make sure is just do a Google search with your color name and say color meaning with it. And you'll pop up several different articles, and it's like Google searching anything. Some people will disagree with each other, but most of the time you're going to find a resounding theme between a lot of the words that are used to describe that color. And if those aren't words that you want to describe the program that you're releasing or the product that you're putting out, right, when it comes to packaging, or that you want to describe your company overall, then maybe that's not the color for you, because this all happens subconsciously, right? Most of the general public, we're not thinking, oh, that color turns me off because of XYZ reason or because it means this certain thing. It's something that happens subconsciously in our minds, and we don't really know why we're not connecting with it. We just know that we're not. So if you have trouble choosing the right colors to coordinate with each other, like make an aesthetically pleasing color palette, my favorite tool to use is called color.adobe.com. And it's free to use to look up color palettes. You can actually upload a picture and build a color palette off of it. If you have an Adobe subscription, you can actually log in and save them or send those color palettes to Photoshop or Illustrator, which is a very cool feature. But I think also just the color palette tools that they have on the free side are incredibly helpful. So you can search for certain words, you can look up color trends. They'll show you what's trending in home decor versus what's trending in web design. And sometimes that can really help you make some colored decisions. Okay, tip number 5 is choosing the right photos. Choosing the right photos is so important to your design. A lot of people will say, well, just put a photo in there. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I love this quote. We are incredible at remembering pictures. Hear a piece of information, and 3 days later, you'll remember 10% of it. Add a picture, and you'll remember 65. That's a crazy statistic, right? By adding photographs to our design, and we'll get into icons and iconography later, but by adding photographs to our design, we're actually helping our viewers connect more with our message. And that is so important to keep in mind. Okay, so I put together a few examples of the different types of photography that you may have in your brand. So with lifestyle photography, what you're going after here, if this is a part of your brand, I actually think that all businesses should end up having all 3 of these types eventually. You may not start out with all 3, but I think that eventually you'll get there. So with lifestyle photography, you're trying to evoke an emotion. You're also using lifestyle photography to show your product or service in use. Rather than just telling them how it works or telling them about your happy customer or whatever the case is, why not show them, right? You'll notice on my website, I had some friends kind of stand in as clients of mine. But when you look at it, you're thinking, okay, well, this is, yeah, I could see myself in that seat, right? I could see myself on the other side of her desk talking to her about my designs. I could see this happening. So I'm actually showing you. I'm not just telling you how it works to sit down and have a design meeting with me. I'm showing you. Okay, so detail shots are the ones that grip you. They pull you in. You want to learn more, right? You want to know all the other details that go along with this little detail shot. So the example I have here of these adorable little forks, man, you want to know, what kind of party is this at? What kind of season is this in? What else do they serve in here? That cheese looks pretty good, right? So those detail shots are the ones that almost kind of leave a question mark in people's minds. They pull you in and then they keep you wondering, and they create this feeling to them that is unmatched, really. They're amazing to use in your marketing. The third one here is product or service shots. The point I want to get across here is that product and service shots do not have to be boring. They just don't have to be boring. Answer the questions that are in people's minds with these shots, right? I could have easily, with this little grub pouch that my client had, I could have easily just shown it in the box, right? We could have just taken a picture of the box and put it up on their website and said, well, you're going to get 12 of these and blah, 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 and you have to read all the description to know the details. But what was one of the questions that was in somebody's mind? Well, I wonder, is the hot dog going to fit just exactly in there? Or is there a little bit of wiggle room? Like, could I slide a fork in there next to it? Like, give me an idea of a scale, right? How many of us flip through Amazon pictures and try to figure out how big is this before we go read the description of the dimensions? All the time. I do it all the time. So, here we're actually showing a hot dog in it. So we're showing them how the product is used. We're giving them that context, and we're letting them not have so many unanswered questions in their mind. We're answering a couple of them for them. So products and service shots don't have to just be boring. So I want you to know how important it is to invest in photography for your business. And this doesn't mean that you have to hire a photographer, but it might mean upgrading your iPhone and purchasing a ring light. Ring lights are a cost-effective way to quickly get good lighting in almost any occasion, any location, any occasion. I have one in my office right now, using it for this video. I swear by them. They are amazing. I bought one off Amazon. It was around $100 and I bought a really nice one. It's incredible. It's not even at full power right now. And you can see like there's nice light throughout my whole room. The only downside is I have a little ring in my glass back here, but you know what? I will live with that. So ring lights are incredible. I fully recommend investing in one for your business. Don't forget to have a little bit of fun with your pictures. The whole internet is so tired of looking at dull and boring photos. Put some thought into the images that you use on your website or in your social media. They're a direct reflection of your brand, right? Okay, my last tip on photos is don't just use a picture because you have it. If it's low quality or it's not a good representation of your brand, put some thought into the images that you use. They're literally a direct reflection. So it's 100% okay to use stock photos if you don't have a high quality photo that you can use for whatever situation. Just be picky when you're picking them out, right? Choose photos that represent who you are and what you do well. One of my favorite tricks is to search stock photo sites by color so that I can ensure the photos will coordinate well with my brand's aesthetic. So typically, the stock photo site that I use, you can choose multiple colors at one time to search by. So it's actually going through and searching their library for pictures that have the colors that I've selected. And I typically will choose pink and white at the same time so that most of the stock photos that I use have a little bit of a pink tone to them. And now by doing that, I can find a lot of different stock photos that have a similar aesthetic and they match with how I like to edit my own pictures. So it doesn't feel like, oh, I just ran out of time last minute and picked whatever stock photo pulled up first on the search. I'm actually putting time into picking those photos. So be picky. Your customers shouldn't have to, your potential customers shouldn't have to suffer through looking through bad graphics, bad pictures just because you're in a hurry or because you didn't have the time or couldn't get out your phone or put some makeup on today to take a really good picture to post. So don't just use a photo just because you have it. Okay, tip number 6. Icons may be a powerful addition to your design. Now, icons don't fit in every situation, right? There are plenty of amazing designs out there that don't use icons, but let's talk about why they can be really important. I love this. Icons are a commonly understood visual language. Man, I'm constantly reminding people that yes, I'm a graphic designer, but my degree was actually called visual communications. And I at the time hated that because I was constantly trying to explain to people what I was going to college for. But now I'm so thankful for that title because now I really understand that I'm not just making things look pretty. Design isn't about making things look pretty. It's about communicating to people, right? I bet, you know, sorry, when you travel in different countries, you can pick out a bathroom sign anywhere, right? I've been to so many other countries in Europe and in Africa, and I could always find the bathroom. I could always find an emergency room, no matter what. Like I could always find those two things, no matter if I didn't speak the language, no matter if I had no idea where I was, right? I could always find those two things. It's because icons are such a universal language. They're understood just by the message that the icon puts out. There's no words necessary to describe it, right? So you can typically say a lot less with written words by including a commonly recognized icon or maybe even an emoji in your design. The primary goal should be to help the user absorb and process information more efficiently. So if you're thinking about using icons in one of your designs, but you're really confused about what style of icon you want to use, right? Because there are a lot of different styles. Do you go with something like I have on the screen here, where it's like solid color icons? Or maybe do you put something in that's like fun little hand-drawn little icons? How do you pick an aesthetic? And then when you go to find the next icon, how do you make sure it matches, right? So this is where I encourage you to take to Pinterest or a stock photo site and do a little bit of research on which icon style you like best. Work on being consistent with the icons that you put out there. I don't think you as a brand should put out an icon that looks this way, today, and then tomorrow put out something that looks completely different, because within this universal language of iconography, you're actually creating your version of that language within your brand. Okay, tip number 7, don't layer too many elements on top of each other, right? I know it can seem like you always need to be doing more when you're designing your own designs, but by layering elements on top of each other, such as text on top of an image, you're making the design more complex. The more complex your design gets, the harder it actually is to work with, because your job in creating this design is to make sure that the elements can all be read, can be stand out, they can each be seen. So in order to make a lot of different elements seen, when you're layering them on top of each other, it becomes super difficult. So remember that you're speaking a visual language with your design, and not many of us have busy as part of our visual language. So we want to stray away from that. Most people are looking to create something simple, but really struggling to get there. So let me show you a little example of how this plays out. Okay, so you can see here, I have a couple different elements working. I have this picture, it's a great picture, but then I have this like leaf, palm leaf overlay, this shadow over on the right side, because I'm like, I just love that, it looks cool, I'm just gonna put it on top, right? And then I'm like, oh yeah, I need to put words in my design. So then you put this headline and this little bit of body copy. I could see this being like the header of a website. But it's too hard to read, right? You're looking at it and you're like, some of the words I can see because there's a dark background, but some of them I can't because it's too light. So it becomes really hard to work with when you're layering text on top of image. But a really easy fix would be to really separate them out. So you can see here now, even though we are layering a bit on top of each other on top of that green box, each of these elements really hold their own space on the page, right? So the palm leaf shadow has its own little space and it touches the corner of that first photo, but it's not distracting from it, right? It's actually leading your eye to it. Then you have 3 different photos that completely stand on their own. And then you have text that is a stark contrast to the background that it's on. So it is easy to read. I've said the headline is more important than the body copy, and I'm telling you where your eye needs to go and what you need to look at here. Okay, so tip number 8 is to create a Pinterest board as a reference. Okay, one of my favorite tricks is to set a timer for an hour, only an hour. Don't go past that. You'll get in crazy brain fog. So create a Pinterest board as a visual reference for your brand. Once you have a bunch of items pinned, then go back and look at them to see which items you pinned a lot of, right? Is there a lot of blue? Is there a lot of green? Is there a lot that have a bunch of space around them? Is there a lot that are really colorful? Are there a bunch that have a certain tone to them or a certain aesthetic to them? Even if you're pinning like logo examples, did you pin a lot that have the fonts with the little feet on the end, or did you pin a lot of script fonts? This becomes your aesthetic. It's a visual way to represent your aesthetic. And also you can look at this Pinterest board and say, what stands out like a sore thumb? Like, what did I pin here that just doesn't fit, right? And take those items out because they're not part of your aesthetic. You might have liked them. You might have thought, oh, that's cute. I'm going to put it on my board. But at the end of the day, it's really not a part of the feeling that you're looking to put out for your brand. So if you're somebody who struggles with staying on brand, right? If you've watched Schitt's Creek, it's all about, are you on brand? So if you struggle with staying on brand with your designs, use this Pinterest board as a double check, right? When you design something new, pull it up and compare it side by side. Does it fit into this overall feeling of your board? If not, then that design probably still needs some work so that it will fit in, right? So I love this tip of using a Pinterest board as a reference. Tip number 9 is the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds is a simple technique where designers divide their designs up into 3 rows and 3 columns. And the points where the vertical and the horizontal lines intersect, right, where they intersect together, is where your focal point of your design should be. This technique can make your designs more attractive and more memorable. So this is used all the time in photography. So I wanted to give you a fun photo example. It's used a lot in photography, but you can use it in any type of design. So here you see, okay, this is a cute product photo of lip balm, right? And I guess they call it sleep balm. And it's a great product photo. There's really nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't really like capture you. I can say this because I took it. It doesn't draw you in. It doesn't have like that thing that really stands out, that thing that really is memorable. So one of the main reasons for this is if you look at the rule of thirds, you put a grid on top of it, it's actually sitting pretty much in the center. Right. So it's like, okay, well, I pretty much just centered it and that's not aesthetically pleasing to our eyes. Right. Okay. So if we look at the difference here, this one draws you to that product, right? You want to keep looking at that product. You want to keep deciphering what's happening in this image. So if you struggle with being too symmetrical or rigid with your designs, this is such a great technique because if you look at the grid here, you can see that this bottom left intersection, I actually wanted their focal point to be the business name, Honestly Margot. So I wanted the viewer to know who produced this beautiful product, right? So I used the rule of thirds to create that. So you can still have this grid to follow, and it's an easy way to make sure that not everything you produce is just centered and symmetrical, because our brains don't want everything to be super symmetrical. We get bored with it, right? We're looking at it and we're like, okay, well, it's just a picture. The previous picture I showed just feels like just a picture. This picture feels like a picture you want to look at, right? There's a difference. Okay, so my last tip that I have for you here, tip number 10, is the black and white test. I actually misspelled that, test. Okay, so what is the black and white test? One of the biggest problems that I see with beginner or DIY designers is contrast, right? The elements just don't seem to like pop off the page. And this can be a huge issue when you're talking about the readability of your text on your design. So if you're questioning whether your design elements really stand out, or maybe if the text is readable or not, this is my favorite test to use. I've actually given this trick to several other designers, and I've had so many people come back to me and be like, oh my gosh, that was so amazing. Like now I can really know if my designs have enough contrast to them or not. And I have to give all the credit to one of my professors in college who taught us this one day. So you can see in the example here that the one, it's the same exact image, right? So somebody came up with the left design and they were thinking, is it readable? Is it not? So you turn it to black and white using any photo editor, right? You can do this on your phone. You can do this in Canva. You can do this literally with any photo editor that you have. And if the elements don't stand out well in black and white, they will not stand out well in color either, right? So I've used this trick for a long time. It can be really hard, especially if we're stuck staring at a design for a really long time, to figure out like, can I see that? Or do I just know it's there because I put it there? So I love this. Just download the image, turn it to black and white. And if you can't really see those elements popping off the page, then you probably need to change up your layout. Okay, so those are my top 10 tips that I have for you guys. This was really fun to put together. I hope that it's really hard to show examples of designs without getting into too much detail. Like I said, I've been doing this for over 10 years. So it's hard for us sometimes to remember what we know that's just second nature. So I hope some of the examples that I put together are helpful for you and that they were simple enough to understand. But, honestly, if you're working on a design and you're wondering or wanting some feedback on it, critiquing is one of my favorite things to do. Feel free to post that DIY design that you're working on in the group and ask for some feedback on it. I can probably really quickly give you some feedback that will make it different than it is, but in a really great way, right? To where you're not losing you in the design, you're not losing your aesthetic, but you're also gaining readability, contrast, all the things that make it feel more like a professional design versus a DIY design. So yeah, I was really excited to put this together for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. The replay will obviously be in the group after this, after I hang up this Zoom. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm available in the group at any time. I'm very excited about our guest speaker. Tim Preby is going to speak on blogging for SEO in a couple of weeks. All of that information is in the group, and it's going to be incredible. I'm actually going to be on the other side of the screen, like taking notes, just like you guys, soaking up the information. So I'm really excited to hear what he has to say. So, okay, I will see you guys soon, and I am going to go cook dinner.